if you're going to get into the sports card world and you want to buy cards and you want to flip them for profit, these are some of the mistakes you should definitely avoid if you're looking to buying cards and looking to make money. Number one, buying boxes of cards from the card shop for top dollar, hoping, or let's say rather change that word hoping, gambling that you're going to pull that really rare card worth 3 or 4 grand when you're spending, $100, $200 on a box is not wise investment. That's just gambling. It's not even hope. Let's just call it for what it is. It's gambling. You're gambling hoping that you're going to pull that card. But so many times you can spend so much money, $100 and you get $10 in value. The majority of the cards you're going to pull are going to not be worth what you're spending. So looking at that from an investment standpoint, thinking you're going to buy boxes and just pull good cards and flip them and sell them is not a good investment. It's basically the adult version of going to Vegas, gambling your money. You win once thinking you've won, but if you add up all the money you spent for that one supposed false win, you're losing a lot of money. Don't get into that. Another thing I would avoid doing is getting into these guys who sell their repacks. Basically, a repack is a way for people to offload their junk cards to you. So I recently bought some cards from a guy, and it was a repack, and it wasn't a lot of money. It was $8 per pack. But if I look at the cards I got a bunch of, dollar, $2, $3 cards. The problem with that is let's say he sells me 5 cards and they're each worth $3, let's say. You could say, whoa, he's selling you a $15 pack for $8. You're doubling your money. Well, no, because I'm not going to be able to sell those cards for $3 each. I might be able to sell them for a quarter, so that maybe some other person can sell them for 50 cents to 75 cents to $1 or whatever it is they're going to sell them for. So if you do the math, it simply is not worth it, and then you're stuck with a bunch of junk cards a lot of people are not going to want, and you're not going to be able to sell them. You're sitting on that inventory for a long time. It's not worth buying these guys who are repacking cards, selling them. It's just a way for them to offload their junk cards that they would not normally be able to sell otherwise. Think about it this way. If they've got a card worth $3 and they know they could sell it for $1 and they've got 100 of these, why would they not just sell each of these cards for $1 each and make their money? Because they know they're not going to sell. So what they do is they pack them up in a bundle, and they're essentially offloading their junk cards to you. So if somebody's pulling a card worth $50, why would they include that in a $10 pack they're creating? It wouldn't make sense for them to do that. So it doesn't make sense for you to buy from them. Avoid that scam. Another thing that I would avoid is I would avoid being too friendly with children. I've been burned with this recently. I went to buy some cards and the guy came out with his kids. His kids had a little binder. Like, oh, we're moving. Would you like to buy it? I'm like, oh, my heart felt bad for the kid. Okay, I buy it. The majority of it's junk. I didn't lose a ton of money. But just because they're kids, this is business, right? So just because a kid's like, oh, please be nice to me, hook me up, or a parent, oh, it's for my son. At the end of the day, you have to remember it's business. And when you're depositing money into your bank, or when you need money to pay your bills, your electric bill doesn't care that you helped out a kid. You have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because if not, you can lose a lot of money very quickly, very fast. Another thing to be careful of if you're going to get into this hobby is make sure you know how to properly evaluate a card. I saw a card recently, it looked really good, but there was some damage in the corner, and so that damage destroys the value of that card significantly. So you might have a really good card that you want to buy, but make sure you look at it in person and make sure you take your time. Don't do a quick glance. I would even suggest buy a magnifying glass, buy something where you can amplify it. So when you're there, make sure you really look at those corners. Make sure you look to see if there's any scratches or dents, because the littlest things can significantly destroy the value of the card. And if someone's got a card for $30, $40, and let's say they're selling it for $25, but there's a corner that's damaged that you miss, that card might only be worth $7 or $8 now, and you're paying, $20, $25. You're paying a premium rate for something that you're not going to be able to sell at a profit. So make sure you know how to properly inspect your cards. Another thing you should avoid buying cards of players when they're in the midst of their season or when they're doing really good. For example, if you like Ohtani and he's in the middle of the playoffs, that's probably the worst time to buy his card, because the market for him is going to be exceedingly high. He's at the peak of his height, so to speak. You want to buy the cards of these players during the off season when things are mellow and when they're slow. You want to sell when they're in the midst of the playoffs or they're going to, their version of a championship, whatever sport you may get into. That's when you want to actually sell, is during that time. I was talking to a guy recently, and he'd bought a card of a player about 5 years ago when this player had just won a championship, and that card he spent, I think he said, $250 for. And when I was looking up the card's value, the card was like $80 to $100. And he was trying to sell it for $350, and I explained, hey, this card's on eBay from $80 to $100, somewhere around that range. And he explained to me, yeah, I had bought the card 5 years ago when this player had just won a championship. So again, he bought the card at the height of the player's potential for the card. Now, 5 years later, the player hasn't gone back to that championship level, and the card has dropped significantly. So that was a very bad buy. You don't buy a card right after somebody just wins the championship, because again, you are paying a premium rate. You want to buy in the off season, and you want to sell during that period when they're in the peak of whatever it is they're accomplishing. Okay, so those are my card tips. Obviously, there's so many more. Let me know in the comment section below what you think, and I look to see you all soon. Okay.